The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. It came down in thin, silver threads, whispering against the windows of their 2-story home in Queen Anne, washing the city in a cold, restless haze. The streets shimmered under the dim glow of the streetlights, and the air smelled faintly of wet cedar and gasoline, the scent of a Seattle winter. Michael stood in the kitchen, leaning against the sink, a mug of untouched coffee cooling beside him. From the living room, he could hear his wife's voice, soft, lilting, with that polite laugh she used when talking to someone she wanted to impress. He frowned. It wasn't unusual for Claire to work late. She was a project manager at an interior design firm downtown, and her clients often called her after hours. But lately, her late-night calls had become routine. Almost nightly. He told himself not to overthink it. People worked late. Projects ran behind schedule. And yet, the way her laughter floated down the hallway, light, nervous, a little too warm, felt wrong. It was a sound that didn't belong in their home anymore. He tried to shake it off, staring out the kitchen window at the endless rain. Seattle was good at making people introspective, maybe too good. Everything looked gray, muted, soaked in quiet melancholy. The kind of city where secrets could live undisturbed for years beneath the noise of the weather. The sound of her footsteps drew closer. Claire entered the kitchen, still holding her phone. Her cheeks were flushed, her blonde hair tied up carelessly, a strand clinging to the corner of her mouth. "Hey," she said casually, as if nothing were out of place. "You're still up?" Michael looked at the clock. "It's past midnight." "I know. Sorry, I just had to finish a few things for a client." She smiled quickly, too quickly. "He's in New York, so the time difference makes it hard to." He raised an eyebrow. "He?" Her eyes flickered, barely noticeable, but he caught it, a hesitation no longer than a breath. "Yeah," she said smoothly. "The client." "Why?" Michael smiled, forcing it. "No reason." She placed her phone face down on the counter, poured herself a glass of water, and took a sip. "You're being weird." "Am I?" She didn't answer. Just smiled again, that practiced, weary smile that once felt warm but now looked like a wall. Then she left the room, leaving behind the faint scent of her perfume, jasmine and something metallic, like rain on steel. He stood there long after she'd gone upstairs, staring at the phone she'd left on the counter. The screen lit up once, just a brief flash before it went dark again. Unknown number. No name. Just a message preview that vanished before he could read it. The next morning, the rain was still there, soft and relentless, tapping at the windows like a second heartbeat. Claire had already left for work when Michael came downstairs. Her mug sat in the sink, half empty, lipstick still staining the rim. He noticed the way her coat was missing from the hook by the door, the gray one she wore only when she wanted to look put together. She hadn't worn it in months. Michael poured himself coffee and stood at the window, watching the fog swallow the skyline. He'd lived in Seattle his entire life, a city of quiet people, polite smiles, and private storms. You learned, over time, how to hide your own weather. But something about the silence of the house unsettled him now. It was the kind of silence that didn't just happen, it was built, layered, intentional. He walked over to the counter where her phone had been the night before. Gone. Of course. He opened his laptop instead, pretending to check emails, but his mind was elsewhere. Her tone last night. That pause when she said he. The way she'd smiled too easily. He typed "how to check deleted messages on iPhone" into the search bar before immediately closing it again. No. That wasn't who he wanted to be. At least, not yet. By noon, he was at work, a small accounting office in Belltown. Numbers usually calmed him. They didn't lie, didn't hesitate. Every imbalance had an explanation. But that day, his thoughts wandered constantly, looping back to her voice, her laughter. When he returned home that evening, Claire's car wasn't in the driveway. Her text said, "Working late again. Don't wait up." No emoji. No, love you. He stared at the message for a long time, the words echoing in the quiet living room. Then he noticed something odd. On the kitchen counter sat a takeout bag, Thai food, their favorite. But only one set of chopsticks. And a receipt, folded, slightly damp from the rain. He opened it. Golden Orchid Thai, 7:42 p.m., table for two. His chest tightened. The name on the card used for payment was hers. Michael's hands trembled slightly as he set the receipt down. He could almost see it, Claire sitting across from someone, smiling that small, careful smile she hadn't used with him in weeks. Maybe it was a colleague. Maybe a client. But he didn't believe that. Not really. That night, he couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like a whisper. Every shadow seemed to breathe. When Claire came home around 11, she moved quietly, not guilty quiet, but careful, like someone trying not to wake a stranger. He pretended to be asleep. She changed in the dark, her silhouette framed by the dim light spilling in from the hall. Then, as she slid under the covers, Michael felt her phone buzz on the nightstand. One vibration. Pause. Another. He waited. Counted the seconds. Then, when her breathing deepened, he reached for it. Locked. Face ID required. He hesitated, his heart hammering, and held the phone toward her sleeping face. Click. Unlocked. The first thing he saw was a string of messages from a contact named E. Can't stop thinking about last night. You looked incredible in that gray coat. When can I see you again? And her reply, sent just 30 minutes earlier. Tomorrow. Same place. 8 p.m. Michael stared at the screen, his chest hollowing out. The words blurred, his pulse roaring in his ears. He read them again, slower this time. Every syllable felt like glass in his throat. Tomorrow. Same place. He set the phone back carefully, lying on his back in the dark, eyes open, the ceiling above him a blank, colorless void. It wasn't shock anymore. It was something colder, quieter. A clarity that hurt more than rage ever could. The next evening, the rain stopped. Seattle, for once, was clear, the air sharp, the clouds fractured and glowing orange from the city lights. At 7:30, Michael sat in his car, parked 2 blocks from Golden Orchid Thai, watching the restaurant's windows glow through the dusk. He wasn't sure why he was there. Part of him wanted to leave, to pretend he hadn't seen the messages. Another part wanted to walk in and see for himself, to know. At 7:58, he saw her car pull up. Claire stepped out, wearing that same gray coat, her hair pinned up, her makeup subtle but perfect. She checked her reflection in the window before walking inside. 2 minutes later, a man arrived. Tall, maybe mid-30s, dark jacket, confident posture. He didn't look like a client. He looked like someone who'd already been invited into her world, someone who belonged there. Michael felt something inside him sink. Not anger, not yet. Just an immense, shattering sadness. He watched them through the window as they talked, laughed, leaned closer. Her hand brushed his arm. Then she reached across the table, and he saw it, that same smile, the one she hadn't given him in months. The smile that had once been his. He didn't remember driving home that night. The city lights were a blur, neon and rain-slick reflections bleeding into one another. The wipers moved back and forth in a slow, hypnotic rhythm, but he wasn't seeing anything. His mind replayed the image over and over, Claire laughing. Her hand brushing the man's wrist. The faint glow of the candles on her face, softening the edges of betrayal into something almost beautiful. When he reached home, the house felt foreign. Every detail, the framed photos, the smell of detergent, the half-read novel on the coffee table, belonged to a different life. A version of himself that still believed in her. He sat in the dark living room for a long time, phone in hand, staring at her message thread with E. No last name. Just that single letter. The mystery of it made him feel insane. He could call her now. He could demand the truth. But some part of him, a colder, crueler part, wanted proof. Something undeniable. Something she couldn't twist into an excuse. So, the next day, he took off work. At 7:30 p.m. sharp, he parked outside the same restaurant again. The rain had returned, steady and rhythmic, washing the streets in liquid mirrors. Through the window, he saw her, same table, same coat. But this time, they didn't linger over dinner. After a few minutes, the man, Ethan, he'd later learn, stood, paid the bill, and walked her out. Michael followed, keeping a few cars between them. They drove across the city, past the waterfront, up through Ballard, then to a quiet neighborhood where the streetlights were dim and the houses sat far apart. Ethan parked in front of a small Airbnb cottage, one of those modern, glass-walled rentals tucked behind a line of trees. Michael's breath caught in his throat as he watched them step out of the car, her hand already finding the man's. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Just watched as she followed him inside. The door closed. He sat there for nearly an hour, the engine off, the rain whispering against the roof. His phone buzzed once, a text from Claire. Running late again. Don't wait up. He stared at it for a long time before quietly laughing to himself, a dry, broken sound that startled even him. The world outside the windshield blurred into streaks of light. The rain softened everything, made it unreal. At 10:47, she came out. Her hair was damp now, her coat buttoned wrong. Ethan followed her to the car, kissed her once, slow, intimate. Michael's hands clenched around the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. For the first time, he felt the heat of real anger beneath his skin. Not the trembling hurt of discovery, but something primal, the fury of being made into a fool. He started the engine, headlights still off, and followed her home again. She didn't see him. When she walked through the door, she looked tired but composed. She kissed him on the cheek, a practiced motion, hollow and mechanical. Sorry, she murmured. Meeting ran long. He didn't reply. Just watched her hang her coat, her hands shaking slightly. Maybe she could already feel it, the shift in the air, the quiet before the storm. At dinner, they barely spoke. He asked about her day, she answered in fragments. She asked about his, he lied easily. Afterward, she went upstairs to shower. He sat at the table, staring at the empty plates, at the wine glass she hadn't finished. Something in him decided it was time. When she came back down in her robe, drying her hair with a towel, he said softly. Who's Ethan? She froze. Just for a moment, but it was enough. The towel slipped from her hand. What? Don't do that, he said. Don't pretend you didn't hear me. She stared at him, her eyes darting, calculating. Then she tried to recover. He's a client. From the firm. We're working on a. Michael stood. I saw you. The words hung in the air like smoke. At the restaurant. Both nights. Her face drained of color. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Michael, please, You lied to me. He took a step forward. You told me you were working late. You looked me in the eye every night and fed me this story like it was nothing. Tears welled up in her eyes. It's not what you think. He laughed, bitterly. Then tell me what it is. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered. It happened. I felt lonely, you were distant. Don't, he snapped. Don't you dare make this about me. Her lip trembled. I'm sorry. He stared at her for a long time. Her face was familiar and strange at once, like a song he'd once loved but no longer recognized. Then he said, quietly, "How long?" She hesitated. 3 months. Michael exhaled, the sound hollow. 3 months. That was the moment something in him broke, not loudly, not violently, but like glass cracking beneath pressure. He nodded once. "Okay. Michael, please." But he was already walking upstairs. He packed without speaking. Just essentials, clothes, his laptop, his keys. Claire followed him, crying, apologizing, pleading. "Don't go. Please. We can fix this. We can go to therapy." He turned to her, his voice cold. "You killed something that doesn't come back." Then he left. Outside, the rain had stopped again. The city was quiet, wrapped in fog. He walked to his car, breathing hard, hands trembling. When he started the engine, he didn't know where he was going, only that it had to be far enough away that her voice couldn't reach him. The phone buzzed on the seat beside him. A message from her. "I'm sorry. Please, just talk to me." He stared at it. Then, slowly, he typed a reply. "You already said enough." And then he blocked her number. The rain began again, gentle and unending, washing the city clean, or trying to. Michael drove until the highway opened into darkness, the sound of the rain steady and rhythmic, like a heartbeat trying to start over. The days that followed blurred together. Michael checked into a small motel on the edge of Tacoma, a place that smelled faintly of mildew and cigarettes, the kind of place no one asked questions. The rain outside never stopped. It followed him, whispering against the windows like a memory that refused to die. He worked remotely. Ate little. Slept even less. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, the way she looked across that table, her hand on another man's wrist, her eyes soft in the candlelight. And then he'd see her face when he confronted her, pale, broken, terrified. He didn't know which version of her haunted him more. One night, a week after he left, she showed up at the motel. He woke to the sound of knocking, slow, hesitant. When he opened the door, she was standing there in the rain, soaked through, mascara streaking her cheeks. "Michael," she whispered. "Please. Let me talk to you." He didn't move. Just looked at her. The woman who'd once been his whole life now looked like a stranger dressed in her skin. "I've ended it," she said quickly. "With him. I swear. I told him it was over. I made a mistake. I was stupid. I missed you." Michael leaned against the doorframe, silent. "You didn't miss me," he said quietly. "You missed who you were when I loved you." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Please don't say that. We can fix this. We can start over. You and me." He stared at her, really looked at her, and felt something strange. Not anger. Not even grief. Just absence. The love he once carried had evaporated like the steam off wet pavement. "There's no us anymore, Claire," he said. "There's just what's left." Her lips parted, but no words came. She reached for his hand, but he stepped back. "Goodbye," he said. And he closed the door. He stood there for a long time afterward, listening to the rain. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't relief. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that follows a storm, when everything that could be destroyed already has been. Weeks passed. He found a small apartment overlooking Elliott Bay, not much, but clean, with big windows and a view of the water. He started running in the mornings again, trying to feel something beyond the ache in his chest. Sometimes, he'd stop on the pier, watch the ferries glide through the mist, and wonder if she still lived in that house. If she'd replaced the photos. If she still checked his social media even though he'd blocked her. He didn't hate her anymore. Hate was still a kind of connection, and he was finally learning to let go. One night, as he stood by the window, watching the lights ripple across the bay, he realized the rain had stopped. Completely. For the first time in months, the air was still. The city lights shimmered against a sky so clear he could see the faint outline of the stars. He smiled, small, almost imperceptible, but real. Because it hit him then, the rain wasn't punishment. It was cleansing. Everything it touched, the city, the streets, his life, it washed away the lies, the guilt, the ghosts. Tomorrow, he'd go back to work. Maybe call his brother. Maybe take that road trip to Oregon he'd always talked about but never done. Life wouldn't be the same. But maybe that was the point. He looked out over the water one last time and whispered to himself. I'm still here. Months later, a thin envelope arrived at his new apartment. No return address, just his name written in her handwriting. He hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single photograph. The two of them, years ago, standing in the rain on their wedding day, both laughing, drenched and happy. On the back, a single line in her handwriting. I hope one day you'll remember the good parts, too. He placed it in a drawer, not to forget, but to keep as proof that once, before everything went wrong, they'd been real. Then he walked outside, down to the pier, where the city lights shimmered on the black surface of the water. The air smelled of salt and pine. No rain. Just peace. And for the first time, that was enough.